game I played with Pat was 7th grade. That was the first year we really played together, but we played Raptors in the winter since 6th grade. And after that, I mean, I played with him for so long. I've dealt with all of his shenanigans.
Like what?
I mean, he was always the first guy, especially in high school. He was the first guy in the locker room and the last one out for everything. He was always late. He he loved to dance in the locker room. That was probably his favorite thing.
My favorite moment with Pat on the lacrosse field, we'll start that off, is we'd do a drill called spaghetti, where we'd always have to, it would be usually a one-on-one with the, or end up in a one-on-one with the goalie. And Pat would always make sure, like in his Pat mind, that every single time he's just gonna make sure he keeps going on me. And he would score every single time. I don't know why, but he would get in my head, and it came down to he scored 21 times in a row on me, and I didn't save one of them. And even when he tried to shoot them at my knees, they'd still go in. And yeah, that was just like what he liked to do, shoot balls at a fat kid.
I think the first lacrosse was we played on the same Nestle team in 6th grade with I think Slim was on that team too. And I really don't remember how good we did, but I just remember he was always looking into it and always wanted the ball.
First time play lax with Pat was probably indoor Raptors, 7th grade when we won the championship. He was just always out there having a good time.
First memories of Pat, I remember back in youth lacrosse when we played. I just remember whenever we would have a game, we didn't really have a goalie at one point because everyone was just so little, and Mr. Gill would always make Pat be a goalie, and he would hate it, but he would always do it.
Pat would always say, "I suck, I'm bad at goalie," and that he could always do better than me. And then I believe it was like he played net for our summer team when Mr. Gill was the coach, and Mr. Gill caught him texting in the net. And
He texted me.
he texted you.
Penalty, and then he texted me.
And yeah, he let in like 6 goals in like 5 minutes, and they pulled him and put me back in. And that was the end of goalie's easy for Pat.
So on the field, no matter what the situation was, he was always the hardest working kid out there. That's kind of hard to say, or to admit, for me being the captain, to admit that a lot of times he was working harder than me, and maybe even being a better example than me, but everybody knows it and it's true. That's just how he is. Practice, he was always having fun. We'd always practice on skillings, and before practice, he'd lose half the balls shooting at McGowan. He was always having fun, but yeah. Anytime he needed to work, he was always working. So he always set a great example on the field, in games. Doesn't matter if we're winning, losing, he's always working his hardest.
My sophomore year, our first game was against Beverly, and Pat was obviously being double covered as he was every single game. And he had probably about 4 or 5 assists because he was so unselfish, it really wasn't all about him. He made 4 or 5 great passes. We ended up winning the game. And so, I think he was pretty happy with his performance. He moved the ball really well, but I don't think he ended up with any goals. And the next game was against Melrose, and that was a big game that year. They were a very good team. They had a goalie going to play college lacrosse, and their coach, Mr. James, actually works in the high school. And obviously, Patty's John with him, talking, hey, Gil, I'm going to shut you down this year. This isn't your year, this is the year that we're going to come into Knowlton Stadium and take one from you guys, and I'm going to shut you down, Gill. And so obviously Gill's giving it back to him come on, man, you can't stop me, and Gill, I think, ended up having 4 goals or something like that, and he put the entire team on his back, and because I think our offense started to struggle that game. He was really the spark that got us going, and I just think that was just such an awesome moment.
Pat was an unbelievable lacrosse player. I was a junior when he started playing with us towards the end of the year, and as soon as he came on the field, he was a game changer. He
always was where he needed to be. I don't know how he did it, but every single time he's in the right spot, always could get the goal when we needed it. And my senior year, which was his sophomore year, was that where he really started to shine. And he was an unbelievable player for us there. And I don't think we would have ever made it to that hanging game if it wasn't for him.
The first thing I remember as a team, I believe this was his first game, was when we played Lexington when I was a sophomore and he was a freshman. And I believe he put in 6 goals, but that might be false. And I was extremely impressed. And once he started performing, they knew this was a kid that was going to be a reliable goal scorer and would be a hardworking kid that they would be able to trust and would lead their team to success.
So I was a junior, and Pat was just coming on as a freshman, and we were at tryouts. And Jesse Samick was a current captain at the time, senior captain, starting attack, and he just went through the drills, and he was always kind of a softer guy. And Coach Perani ripped him because he was dodging the checks and things like that, and making sure that he wasn't getting hit. And then Pat stepped up right after Jesse and just ran right over one of the defenders and went straight, like bull rush straight to the cage and just put it in the top left. There was a locker room Pat and there was on the field Pat. And on the field, he knew he had to come down here. He wanted to put in an hour and a half, 2 hours of work. He was quiet, he was silent, he just went to work. But then as soon as he got in the locker room, it was all smiles, all jokes. That's just what he was all about. He wanted to make sure everybody was having a good time playing the sports that he loved. And he knew when he had to go to work and he knew when he was going to have fun. So that's just what he did.
He was there for anyone. He was everyone's friend. Like even his close friends, he would be like, he'd be close with you, but he was close with everyone. And it was never a dull moment.
He didn't take life too seriously. You know, there's kids who, you know, maybe would have a terrible game or something like that, but if Pat didn't play that well, he would hop back on the bus smiling and just say, you know what, we're going to go back and practice tomorrow, we're going to get back after him.
As a friend, as an underclassman, you know, he was someone that I thought was very approachable. You know, he was very easy to talk to, easy to ask a question, because when you're an underclassman, you don't really, you know the unwritten rules of what's going on in the program and kind of what happens. So he was always a guy that you could go and talk to and say, hey, Pat, what should I do here? You know, am I invited to this team dinner? Am I welcome and stuff like that? And I think that's really who he was. You know, he was approachable by anybody, no matter how much you knew him, just because he always had a smile on his face and he was just so easy to come up and talk to.
He's a good kid, always there. Always made me laugh, kept the mood up, smiling.
Yeah, definitely a loyal friend. Always there, by your side. Good laugh, too.
I felt like Pat was a kid who had a great personality. He was a great kid, funny, but he knew when we were on the field, when we were playing a game, that like it was time to play. And when we weren't playing, he was himself. He wasn't someone who he wasn't.
He's inspirational, I guess. People see him and they just, I won't say they want to be him, but like they want to do what he can do. Like he can like just bring joy to people.
It was my last game of my senior year, and just as I had talked about before, I was coming down the fast break and I saw him right across, same thing as always. He put it in the net for me, and I just remembered grabbing his cage and like pulling him in and just like bumping my head against him, trying to get him psyched up, and he was so ready to go.
He'd never be upset because we'd be down or something. He'd come in and like get the team riled up and get them going, go out and score a goal, come back laughing, and he'd always be happy. No matter how hard he got hit, he'd be laughing.
The people like talk. I mean, yeah, Pat was like a great player. Like he was individual athlete. He was best lacrosse player we've ever had. But he wasn't just a great player. He was a great teacher. He always, in practice and in the games, like if you did something wrong, he'd always say like how to do it right and like why you did it wrong and how you could do it better. Yeah, he took the time not only to better himself but to better the rest of the team.
He always wanted to make everyone better and do what was best for the team.
First playoff game my senior year, so the last game we ever played, it was against Marblehead. and the kid who was going to be playing defense on him in the game got his number somehow and started texting him like awful things about his family and everything else. And I was sitting next to Pat at Joe Fallon's grad party, and instead of getting mad or like going back at the kid, he literally starts laughing about it and saying he just starts texting hilarious things back to the kids, and we're just sitting there laughing about it. And so he always took the high road. I think most people would probably go back at the kid, like get really defensive, do something bad back to the kid, but Pat took it as a joke.
So I texted him and I told him, I was like, hey, like, I'm not going today, like, just go without me. And then like 20 minutes later, I like walked down into my kitchen, and there he is sitting there talking to my dad, like having a bowl of cereal with my dad. And I'm like, what are you doing? He was like, oh, like, I don't know, I came over and I just walked in the front door and your dad was here. He's like, hey, have some cereal. I was like, you don't even know him. Like, I mean, that was just the type of kid that he was. Like, everyone, he could spark up a conversation with anyone, anywhere, and everyone liked him.
I guess another funny story was when I was a sophomore and he was a freshman, we were selling the pamphlets for fundraiser for Piranha.
The coupon?
Yeah, and we were selling outside of China Sky, and we each sold like $60 worth that night. And we were standing outside China Sky, and Pat was like, yeah, like, want to go get Chinese food? So we went inside and spent all the money we just got from selling the tickets on Chinese food from China Sky, and then figured out later how to pay Piranha back. But I guess that's just another example of how he was always looking to have fun. A little mischievous, but always a good time.
If you knew Pat Gill, you knew he had a left hand and a left hand only. But he split dodged this kid just to go to his left hand, and he broke this kid's ankles. And the kid fell down, and as he fell down, he points and laughs at the kid, and then keeps running, dishes the ball, shoot and score. And that was my favorite memory.
I think he's probably the only kid I've ever seen play with only a left hand and still be the best player on the field.
His sophomore year was that where he really started to shine, and he was an unbelievable player for us there, and I don't think we would have ever made it to that hanging game if it wasn't for him.
The game our freshman year, it was the first playoff game against Nauset, I believe, and I think we were losing. Pat scored like 4 or 5 goals, and we came back and won the game. And that's when I think the Pat Gill phenomenon really took off in the eyes of Winchester lacrosse.
You can still see his mark, still rippling through. Where now this year, Mr. Gill is helping us out with doing the summer lacrosse again, and that'll probably be a tradition or an off-season thing that we'll continue to do. And that all started with him. That was all his idea to get us all playing in the summer, and that's huge.
When I would go down and work with the defense on one side of the field, I could see him down there directing everybody, making sure everyone knew where they needed to be and what offense they were running, what offense they were in. And you could really see he just knew so much about the game and wanted these kids to be perfect. He wanted the team to just be that much better than they ever have been. And it was impressive to see a kid who came up as a quiet freshman and now all of a sudden was practically coaching the offense. It was impressive.
Just to carry on his character, I would say he was best friends with almost everyone in our entire grade. We had a couple new kids come to our high school from out of town or from different countries and stuff like that, and he was always the first ones to go up and introduce himself and make them kind of feel welcome to the high school.
No one else like him. He's the best of the best. He had 100 goals by the end of his junior year. He was special.
There's so many stories that I could come up with, and I'm sure every single one of us here could come up with many different stories about Pat. But I don't know, she wanted to get to know people to know who he was. But I think that if you look at his family, if you look at Aaron, you look at Brendan, you look at Mr. Gill, you look at Mrs. Gill, you see him in every single one of them. And that's who he was. They are everything that he was and forever will be.